even if you keep the raw material costs the same. Just the impact of increased transfer costs is $300 a ton. Sometimes you just have to believe in the market and take certain risks, even if it's contrary to public opinion. Egypt is the best example where we're working on two expansion projects.
Welcome to Polycast by UT, the podcast from Urethane's Technology International, where we talk markets, business and big trends across the polyurethane industry. I'm delighted today to be joined by Martin Kruczinna, Chief Executive of Pearl Group, which is a global manufacturer of polyurethane systems and sustainable insulation technologies. Since becoming CEO in 2021, Martin has led Pearl's transition from a Covestro joint venture to an independent, backward integrated business while expanding its footprint across the Middle East and Africa, Europe and Asia Pacific. He's overseen new production sites, diversified the company's portfolio and strengthened its focus on sustainable polyurethane solutions, including recycling-based polyester technologies. Previously, he held senior commercial roles at Edelman, Zeal Group, Cavaris and Bayer. He's a man who has worked with cardboard boxes, glass containers, flexible and rigid plastics packaging before reaching the very pinnacle by entering the world of polyurethanes. Martin, a very big welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephen.
Thank you. The war in the Middle East, of course, has pushed one of the world's most critical trade arteries, the Strait of Hormuz, into a state of near paralysis. In recent weeks, vessel traffic has collapsed, with only a fraction of the usual shipping able to pass through, as Iran and the US enforce competing naval blockades, and the threat of mines and vessel seizures continues to hang over the region. The strait is a vital route for feedstocks as well as finished petrochemicals, and the disruption is already feeding through into higher costs, supply uncertainty and logistical bottlenecks. And the polyurethane industry is exposed to both feedstock volatility and trade flows on a global level. So what does this look like on the ground, and how are suppliers in the region adapting in real time? Martin, you're speaking to us today from Dubai. So how mixed is the picture from where you're sitting, and is anywhere operating normally or some semblance of normal?
So, Stephen, first of all, I think I can call myself blessed to still call Dubai my home. I don't think there's any better place with regards to quality of life and with regards to the ease of doing business internationally. Having said that, of course, the geopolitical situation is a challenge for the whole region, and the biggest impact is actually on the flow of goods. I personally have never had any concern for the health of my family and myself. Life here goes on as usual. So that the challenges that have affected Pearl mainly are with regards to receiving raw materials. So since the Strait of Hormuz is obviously blocked, we had to search for alternatives, and the UAE authorities have done a great job opening up alternative ports in the UAE, as well as cooperation with Sohar in Oman. And depending on where you're being supplied from, of course, there are other trade routes that are being opened up. Jeddah port is being used heavily. See, one of the benefits that we're seeing now is 5 years ago, when I started out at Pearl, we had one production site. By now, fast forward 5 years, we're having 6 production sites all across the world, which is not only a sign of our growth strategy, but it is also wonderful risk mitigation, right? And so suddenly we have the option of supplying our customers in the countries like Saudi Arabia from Egypt, if we choose to do so. We are supplying our customers in India from Vietnam, right? So basically, we are reaping the benefits of an international production setup.
And in the UAE, how many sites do you have there?
We have 3 sites in the UAE.
So that network there, what's the reason behind having 3 sites? Do you have different special focuses in those locations?
Well, one site is dedicated to the production of polyester polyols and prepolymers. So it's basically complementing the blending facilities. And the second side is our that we opened up is our original system house before we set up our new headquarter in a few years ago. And this was basically due to the strong growth in demand. We just needed additional capacities, right? So basically, two of the sites are catering towards production of polyol formulations, and one side is producing polyesters and prepolymers.
Okay. And location wise, because you mentioned that they are, I mean, one of the things I've found from having conversations with companies on the ground in the UAE in recent weeks is the very issue you've pointed to, which is the huge delays in cargo being trucked across the country from to other ports. Are any of your locations close to one of those sort of, fruitful ports? And are you then having to kind of really maximize what you're producing out of that location?
Well, see, the distances in the UAE are manageable. So basically, the infrastructure is second to none. So that is indeed not the issue. The challenges that we're seeing on that side is more the increase of freight costs. Like for the long distance until the material reaches the port in the UAE. Of course, if you having longer transport in the UAE, that also has an impact, but it's negligible compared to the increase in freight rates on ocean vessels, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and that impact is quite significant, and we need to make sure that this is being passed on to into the chain, and our customers have to take their share of the load as well.
Mm. How much are we talking about in terms of costs rising per container or per ton, for example? And how much are you able to pass that on in surcharges?
So obviously, raw material prices have gone through the roof. Everybody is aware of where MDI stands. Looking at ICEs, so almost any other product out there has gone through the roof. But what we like to do is we try to single out the impact just of increased transfer cost rates to make it tangible. And what we've seen so far, and things are obviously very transient these days, what we've seen so far is an impact of close to $300 a ton, even if you keep the raw material costs the same. Just the impact of increased transfer costs is $300 a ton.
And I've spoken to companies that perhaps almost don't want to announce the surcharges they're having to, or the price rises they're having to introduce. How transparent do you feel the industry is being with the realities of the cost hikes and how those are being passed down the chain?
So I believe in the utmost amount of transparency towards customers, as long as you're not breaking any secrecy agreements, or as long as it's just not information that's purely internal, right? But the better customers understand the current situation, the easier it is for them to plan accordingly, right? And so obviously what has happened in the past is, well, like, we had to pass on the cost increases because otherwise we wouldn't be able to exist, and I would be doing a bad job as a CEO. But like we just need to explain to customers what the situation is. We need to tell them, listen, this cost increase that we're passing on is just step number one. In 2 weeks there'll be the next one. In 2 weeks there's going to be the next one, and that's the reason, right?
Yeah.
And here you
Yeah.
see the indices, and and the thing that has helped us there is just also being very transparent about the supply chain disruptions, and that basically we're also talking about allocation of resources, because like it's
Yeah.
not just about the cost. Feel free, you would actually help us, dear customer, if you would source somewhere else, because the situation is a bit tight right now. And usually what happens then is customers are very understanding, and if they're not, they pick up the phone, call a few people, and then the next day they're very understanding.
When you go through periods like this, does customer loyalty strengthen because people value reliability more, or does it weaken because buyers are maybe having to chase whatever supply they can get?
Well, Stephen, I believe these kind of situations, tough times, are a wonderful opportunity to strengthen relationships. So you do not have, like, probably most companies, including Pearl, we don't have the bandwidth, the ability to cater to every customer out there. these days we need to focus on the core customers and try to work with them. They do appreciate that we do this, that we allocate scarce resources to them, that we do practice open communication. And basically, this is what we're best at: relationship management, right? And of course, then good products and excellent technical service. But nothing works without the relationship. And so customers do appreciate that, because it's a difficult world out there these days. And still, the projects are going on, right? And polyurethane is a wonderful product that's providing lots of value, so we can help our customers navigate these difficult times, and that definitely strengthens the relationship.
Is there any stockpiling, or do companies actually say, well, actually, no, the costs are so prohibitive that we can't risk doing that at the moment?
It depends on the customer. So some customers definitely want to be on the safe side and make sure that they do have enough material available. But obviously, our material is being used to produce products that contain a lot more than just polyurethanes, right? So if a sandwich panel producer doesn't have the metal coils, what good does all the polyurethane systems do, right? If the customer is producing refrigerators and doesn't have the blowing agent, that doesn't really help them. So this is really based on the specific strategy that the customer is driving. It also depends on what customers expect with regards to future cost development. And of course, there are different scenarios. Some scenarios basically say, well, we've plateaued out. Others are saying that this is just the beginning, and the cost could go up much further. And depending on where you segment yourself in that spectrum, you will also execute a different purchasing strategy.
You've got your 3 locations you mentioned in the UAE. How much of what you produce is for the domestic market, and how much is exported? Where are have the export flows changed in any way since this start?
Yes, so obviously, since the transport out of the UAE has become more costly, with basically trucking needing to be involved to different ports, we have tried to shift export business as much as we can to our other sites, to Vietnam, Egypt, or even Jeddah, because Jeddah port is giving direct access or closer access, for example, to Europe, etc. Right? So this is really where the benefits of an international setup come in. So we're using the UAE, not exclusively for UAE business, but percentage-wise more than we had in the past, indeed.
Yeah, and I suppose it makes sense, because I guess at times like this, maybe international companies, multinational companies that are coming in and maybe selling into into the UAE market might say, well, actually, for now, we'll kind of pull back and we'll focus on maybe Africa, other markets until this situation dies down. So you've got this potentially an even bigger market to serve, haven't you?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The world is our oyster.
And you mentioned Saudi, which is obviously very important. You built or you established your production and storage facility there, I think, in 2023.
That's correct, yeah.
And you supply, originally I thought you supplied Saudi exclusively from the facility, just the Saudi market, but I'm guessing with all of this that's kind of changing.
Well, we have always supplied other markets apart from Saudi from the Saudi side, like
Okay, right.
like Qatar, like Kuwait, etc. Um, but also, see, basically, we believe in local production. We do believe it as a sign of commitment to customers, as um, uh, something that facilitates supply chain towards the customer. So basically, it just increases the USP that we have as supplier, and also it is a differentiator against competitors who do not do this, right? And so the value that you provide is strongest within that country, and then you can look at markets that would be export markets for like other sides and this side as well, and then you can look at transport costs, etc. But so the Saudi side was built for Saudi because it is a wonderful market and one that will have a great future. But each of the sites that we're building basically has a hybrid function. The majority of the demand should go to the markets where it's located, but then there's also a relevant percentage that's targeted for exports.
And you mentioned localization being very important for your production. That's obviously very important in Saudi with the Saudi Vision 2030. Essentially, they want to reduce reliance on imports as well. So that ties in quite nicely, doesn't it, in terms of how you're doing your business there?
That's correct. Obviously, like we don't set up a production site just for the next 2 to 3 years, right? We build a production site because we believe in the market long term, and we're there to stay. So we believe in the Saudi vision, and it's not just the giga projects that we believe in. It's just the normal growth and the strength of the customers in different segments in the market. The market has been basically the Saudi setup in 2023 was a plant that really started all and opened our eyes to the opportunities out there, and encouraged us to go further.
And you touched on your sourcing of feedstocks, which obviously is the issue for you with especially with the situation in the Strait. How have you had to adapt how you source your feedstocks and where you source them?
Well, Stephen, if you look at the growth that we were allowed to enjoy over the last 5 years, obviously one of the strategic tasks that we tackled was to ensure we have a sufficiently wide supplier base. And it's no secret that obviously, well, we are coming from a Bayer/Covestro history, so we're having very good relationships with our friends at Covestro and Leverkusen. Um, and at the same time, that's not enough for the visions that we had and are still having and the growth that we've been incurring. So we've built up very strong partnerships with other suppliers out there, and they are not all in one place, right? And that helps us now in this phase as well. We don't have all eggs in one basket. And so we can receive material from different suppliers at different locations, which really, really helps us and mitigates the risk. And this is also one of the values that we're providing to our customer, right? If they would be sourcing things from different sources or just from one location, they wouldn't have this risk mitigation that we can now offer to them.
Absolutely. And does this prove kind of the case for independent systems houses? You know, that you're structurally more resilient than importers, that providing in-kingdom blending and capacity in Saudi and then the UAE. I mean, obviously you're still exposed to the upstream realities, but you know, there's a big case there for having that kind of system that you
That's
have.
actually a very interesting point, and I think you're right. So if you look at a forward integrated producer of MDI, for example, right, and obviously, well, you mentioned me having joined the most wonderful industry on earth, polyurethanes. I basically have never really left, right? I started my career there and during Bayer times in the early 2000s. And so I can compare apples to apples in this case. And well, of course, you do have like most suppliers. We know there are some suppliers that only have one MDI production site, but basically you do have like a very relevant risk that if that site fails, and sometimes they do, then you have an issue. If you are an international or global producer of isocyanates, you usually have more than one plant, and then you have some risk mitigation on paper, right? Because usually the demand is allocated to customers within that region, and the lead times to get material from the US or from China to Europe or to the Middle East are quite long, and it takes like you can probably react to something with a lead time of, I don't know, 2 to 3 or maybe 4 months. But it's nothing that happens at like by pressing a button. And if you are an independent system house chain and you do have diversified sourcing, you don't have that cluster risk. And at the same time, you have the purchasing power to have attractive conditions that you can pass on to your customers. So indeed, dear customer, do not buy from the multinationals, buy from independent system house chains.
With you know, they talked about kind of the changing trade flows. What about the changing of the kinds of products that you're selling? Are you exporting only selective grades at the moment? Are you having to change the way you produce certain things because of feedstock availability?
So of course, you know, like depending on the product, you might have certain drop-ins that are of equal chemical consistence, and there you have the flexibility that you always have. But what we like, I think the selection process is more based on the nature of the customer, right? So obviously we like if we don't have an abundance of material available to us, we will focus on our core customers as a first step. And at the same time, there's certain things that we will have to consider, for example, creditworthiness of customers in the marketplace. If the markets are becoming a more difficult place, you have to maybe worry about some segments more than others. Spray foam is one of those segments where customers have less assets available than other areas. So those are considerations. But our core customers, we know them extremely well. They're great companies, well led, and they are also more secure in I don't know, in stormy times than others might be out there. But in general, Stephen, and you might touch upon this, I feel these kind of times are actually times of opportunity. So we talked about the opportunities to strengthen customer relationships. There are opportunities to, um, accelerate certain developments that will be helpful in any case. For us, that's basically strengthening our new sites. And I'm specifically thinking of our Egyptian site, a wonderful site. I was actually just there last week and welcomed the Egyptian Prime Minister. Um, and for us, it's a wonderful opportunity to ramp it up even quicker and not just supply the Egyptian customers and the North African customers and European customers, but even customers beyond that, which pushes us to add like even more shifts and strengthen everything there, which is a good thing for us. And at the same time, of course, it's never easy, but we're strong, we're resilient, and we'll manage the situation well.
Absolutely. And when we talk about disruption, I mean, no one knows how long this is going to go on for, and that's the issue here, I guess. When we talk about resilience, how do you even contemplate how you or factor in the resilience if the disruption lasts weeks rather than days, or in the case of even returning to normal, if things did end today, we're talking possibly 1.5, 2 years before things are kind of any back to normal.
Yeah, and we don't know what the new normal will be afterwards, right? So there is definitely a lot of uncertainty there with regards to how long this will take, and what it then actually will look like. And again, I think those companies that will um, get out of this stronger are those that are agile, that can react to unforeseen circumstances quickly. And I definitely believe Pearl is going to be one of them. And in general, as you mentioned before, independent system house chain, because they still have this high level of entrepreneurship. And this is exactly what you need, right? If you can marry the superior quality of products and technical service with the agility and like dealing with unforeseen challenges, this is how you win the marketplace.
And it brings us nicely onto Pearl as a group, and how you've been growing since certainly since you took over as CEO 5 years ago. You've been very busy growing with new sites in Vietnam in 2024, India and Egypt, which you've mentioned, which was last year. How are those new sites going for you? And also, if I could ask you as part of the same question, what's your broader expansion plan going forward? And particularly, what are your plans for Southeast Asia?
So in general, if I look at the last 5 years, our new production sites have been the cornerstone of our growth, right? And growth is never easy. It's easy to just say we've reached that milestone and everything was a piece of cake. No, it's not. You encounter a lot of obstacles on the way, which is the fun part, right? One thing I personally realize is things usually take longer than I expect, right? So our site in Saudi Arabia, I think we had a delay of 8 to 9 months. And in the end, everybody says, oh, there's nothing for Saudi Arabia. Well, I should have known that when I set out the plan.
Yeah.
But we basically were rewarded with like results afterwards that were drastically beyond what we had expected, right? And so all of our new sites are doing well, and at the same time, all of our new sites had taken longer than expected. So that's one of the lessons I'd learned. And at the same time, then afterwards, they were very rewarding. right? And so we have been growing in Southeast Asia. Basically, for us also, Southeast Asia has been very helpful for the Indian market. And at the same time, the target is to grow much more. Recently, the focus has been very much on the Egyptian market, as I just mentioned, and it's very rewarding to see the customers' responses now. Um, I do remember having been to the Egyptian market 5 years ago after I arrived, basically coming back after I'd left Buyer Pearl in 2012 and realizing we need to change something with our approach. And we did, right? We hired the right people. We made a gutsy call. I remember having been to a market intelligence meeting where one of the presenters said, I just invested in Egypt, and I wish I hadn't. And I basically shivered when I heard this. But I believe in the fundamentals of the market, and the customers are wonderful customers. Like very strong, export oriented. And yes, the system is not always easy, but if you believe in the fundamentals of the growth, it's a wonderful market. And it's a good base also to export to sub-Saharan Africa, to Northern Africa, and also to Europe, right? And so coming back to your question. Things have always taken longer, but they will give us a lot of joy for the decades to come.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you about Asia Pacific, because while some global companies seem to be retreating from APAC, you're investing in it, which again is one of those situations where it's almost like you're saying, well, okay, we're going to take a more of an expansionary view on this and invest perhaps where others are seeing more risk at the moment, or
Well, yes. So I personally would challenge anybody who stops investing in Southeast Asia looking at GDP growth rates of 6 to 7% in almost every country that you find, right? Are those countries always easy to enter? No, they're not. But the growth is there and the potential is there and the size is there, right? Look at the population of Indonesia with 75
absolutely,
million
yeah.
people, etc. Vietnam, wonderful country. Malaysia, so many promising countries out there. But I think what you're saying holds true for the whole polyurethane systems industry, Stephen. I feel the Western multinationals are making a mistake. They are basically cutting costs. They are not devoting themselves to the granularity of the business. And if you do it right, it is really rewarding. But customers do require technical service. They do require the human touch. They do want to be talked to, right? And so if you don't cater to that adequately, you're leaving the field to the independent system house chains, and they're doing a great job. Not just us, right? So we've been very successful, but our competitors in the marketplace have also developed really nicely. And then, of course, it's also no secret that there's a very big Chinese player who's having a totally different concept, which is also working well. So I feel the Western multinationals are kind of being squeezed in the middle, and
Yeah.
if they don't react, but the market will be gone for them. We'll happily take it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you talk about Europe. And what about your business back in Germany? Is that more of a strategic location?
So for us, Germany was the first foot in the door to also start supplying the European market. And we are having a wonderful customer close to Osnabrück in Germany who's single sourcing from us, producing, amongst others, these wonderful.
Of course, yes, know it well.
you know them quite well, right? So they're a wonderful customer. But basically for us, that's a foot in the door to conquer the European market. In all honesty, it doesn't really matter like where in Europe you have the entity. It's about showing presence and being committed. And I hope soon we'll have many more cover stories of new customers in Europe for UTech.
Absolutely, I love stories like that. PU Chew was a great story. Just having a dog on the front cover, Martin. You won't believe how much of an impact that has. People pick up the magazine just for that reason.
Amazing.
And so in terms of local production hubs and Southeast Asia, is there anywhere? I mean, where's your next location? What have you got plans? Is there something concrete, something in the pipeline?
See, Stephen, I think right now, first we need to weather the storm. right? So we love talking about growth and about geographic expansion, and we have moved very quickly. But now we basically have to see how the next few months pan out in order to adjust our strategy accordingly. Um, we do have several projects in our pipeline that basically we just have to get out. But at the same time, we need to be showing a certain amount of conservatism as well, or call it prudence, right? We need to make sure that whatever we do is based on solid footing. And so let's see how things develop and how the world will look like in half a year from now, and then we'll take the next step. Having said that, at the same time, we are working on expanding our capacities for our existing sites, right? So right now, I'm talking about Egypt, where we're working on two expansion projects, but that is obviously much lower risk because we see how things are starting to roll. We've overcome the bureaucracy, and then that's a no-brainer. So 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 that means capacity is continuing to grow, capabilities are growing, but with regards to the next location somewhere else, give me some time and I'll brief you soon.
You have your times two strategy, of course. So in that regard, is that on target? What's your internal deadline for that? What have been the engines behind that? I mean, I'm guessing if I said, would it be geographic or application, you'd probably say both. But as a ratio, what's the what's the majority?
100%. It is both indeed. The stronger of the two is the geographic expansion, right? If you look in terms of quantities, the diversification, of course, is quite attractive with regards to margins, because it is really specialized applications, what we at Bayer used to call diversified industries, and it's really satisfying to see what the strong work that team is doing, because I witnessed it from 2009 to 2012 how difficult it was to get things off the ground, and now we're basically talking about really relevant quantities there, that are not just going to stay but going to grow further, right? And the secret to the success was really to try out several things. Not everything works, right? So not everything that we touch turns into gold, but many things do. And so you just have to take some bets and well, of course, add the substance behind it, and be also perseverant and show the resilience, and then over time these will give you an opportunity to monetize them. But the stronger one of the two thrusts is the geographic expansion indeed. I joined Pearl in February 2021, and basically we first focused on finalizing the buyout from Covestra, and then in fall of 2021, I set up the growth strategy, which was a 5-year strategy. So if you count starting in 2022, this is year 5. So we are clearly on track to achieve that target this year. And we just have to see what geopolitical events then do with regards to quantities sold, right? So that's a one question mark. But basically, this will be the year of us having completed the strategy, and we're well on track.
I know your strategy then was to double the size of the company in 5 years. On the surface, that's quite an unusually ambitious strategy for a mid-sized PU systems house. I mean, is that a fair comment?
Yeah, well, my personal belief is that targets are only worthwhile if there's a risk of failure, right? If there's not, then you're just playing it safe. Now, when I talk about risk of failure, I don't mean, sacrificing a company. The company has always been strong and would have been very strong without me, of course. But why should you limit yourself in the size of the ambitions that you define? Why not think big? Obviously, this was not just a wild idea. If you look at the structure of the polyurethane industry, there was a clear opportunity. So if you do believe in the impact of localized production, if you do feel that market is neglected by the multinationals, if you do see there's one strong international player that has a totally different concept and that has its right of existence, and you can coexist, why not go ahead, right? And you don't invest into 5 sites at the same time. You set up one, and you take the lesson learned, and you adjust your approach and optimize it, and then take the next one. And you can always see one of the things that we had to learn is so at some point we realized, okay, this is how you grow, which is great, right? So it sounds like a revelation, but for us, like the sales team and the technical team, they're amazing. So they learned how to grow. And then the next step was, how do we deal with the complexity in the background? If you have everybody on one floor, it's very easy to solve problems. But if you suddenly have a team in Vietnam and a team in Egypt, it is not that easy, right? And so there are many things that we had to learn about growth in the background, and that was in some cases the bigger challenge. But then you learn it, you adjust, you make some mistakes, you do some things the right way, and then you get better at it, and then that strategy starts accelerating.
And you extended your contract, Martin, as CEO for a further 5 years. What will you have to do or change to fulfill the company's ambition, do you think, to become the global market leader in PU-based solutions by 2034? What have you learned from the first 5 years that maybe you'll adapt for the second?
Well, definitely the meta learning is constant learning, right? And never hesitate to challenge yourself and your convictions that you held until a certain point of time, especially in these times. And so if you would have talked half a year ago, I would have told you, well, listen, I want to set up 2 new production sites next year. Now I'm saying, well, Stephen, let's first see how, this geopolitical situation plays out, because anything else would be foolish, right? And we owe it to our customers to just play things safe for the time being, right? So I think we always need to monitor of geopolitical events, but at the same time also look at the opportunities that the industry pose itself, because the growth will be there, right? There will be GDP growth, and the polyurethane industry grows in line or above GDP growth. So this growth will have to be catered to. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to believe in the market and take certain risks, even if it's contrary to public opinion. Egypt is the best example. And there are many, many other markets that do have this kind of potential, and where some other players would be more hesitant to look at, indeed.
And you touched on earlier on your relationship with Covestro, of course. You spun off from them in 2021. How has their new UAE ownership impacted your relationship? Does that change anything?
So, no, it has not. So our contact partners are the same. Covestro is a very reliable partner in every regard. And at the same time, having worked for Bayer for 11 years, I think this is a very positive development for Covestro and the people working there. I think this move gives them security. It gives them access to cash eventually in order to further expand. I personally would love to see an MDI plant in the UAE. I think for Covestro, that would be a wonderful strategic decision if this was ever to be made. And maybe, for Covestro, that's an opportunity to make the next step and move away from this, Germany, Tarragona, Houston, Caojing logic, and basically add something right in the middle to closer to where the growth is, to cater to the wonderful growth of the GCC, being close to India, where the growth is phenomenal, also not far away from Southeast Asia, right? And basically have a USP with regards to location. The only pain point is that you basically have to set up a full Verbundstandort with the investment that's required, and you do it once, and then you'll live happily ever after.
Yeah.
So I strongly believe that the takeover of Covestro by ADNOC is a very positive move for Covestro, for ADNOC, and for everybody who has a strong interest in the region, like Pearl.
And I wanted to touch on sustainability, because that's an important aspect, seemingly, of your business as well. And when we talk about insulation, obviously it plays a crucial role in reducing energy consumption and emissions of carbon. So foam insulation that incorporates waste PET bottle materials has an even greater impact. So how is that upcycling project going?
It's going very well. Actually, also the current situation is opening opportunities to get customers more interested in these kind of projects. But for me, it's the holy grail, right? Basically, you're taking waste and you're upcycling it into something that saves the world. right? So PET bottles, shredded PET bottles, basically reducing thermal energy waste and lowering CO2 emissions. So it's a beautiful narrative. It's not just a narrative; it's something that's actually there, and we just have to push on and educate customers about this. And I think this will also be a door opener in the regions, like Europe, for example, like Australia. And but also in hopefully in the Middle East, it will also excite even more people in the future.
I was only reading this morning, and Beatrice will thank me for this to give Sustainable Plastics, our sister publication, a little nod here. But I noticed they had about 3 stories in their news alert today about the UAE and what's happening in there in terms of EPR schemes and lots of opportunities there. And it kind of got me thinking, well, if we're talking about polyesters, PET, what about PBT, PLA, PBS? I mean, can they be used for polyurethane?
See, obviously, I'm not a chemist, but I'll happily use any material that's recycled or that's green, because it helps us to improve the value proposition of what we sell, and also to increase the acceptance of our products. And the polyurethane industry can be proud of the value that it provides. And often people who use it are not, or they use it unknowingly and don't understand the full value we do provide, and then they start talking negatively about plastics, right? Even though if you look at the CO2 balance, basically, well, Pearl has set up a CO2 counter, kind of counting the CO2 reductions achieved by the insulation material our customers do produce, and it's massive. We got it certified by TÜV Rheinland, considering our German origins. And it's a wonderful tool to open people's eyes. And well, they're using the material anyway. They can also be proud of it, and we can all be proud of working in this beautiful industry.
We talked about your geographic expansion. In terms of application expansion, I know you've kind of evolved into markets including polyurea, automotive, packaging, footwear, which has been the most not profitable, which has been the most sort of beneficial for you? Has any of those markets surprised you, and where's next?
Well, each of those applications is like a little baby that you have, right? And then you see it grow, and you give it a lot of love and a lot of energy, and put resources to it, and then you have some setbacks, and eventually you do succeed. The Probably the application that I'm most proud of is cast elastomers, because it took a lot of energy to get it going, and it took a long period of time. But now we're having very, very happy customers, right? And it's a product that you can transport very far and still be profitable. Having said that, I'm also very proud of like simple rubber binder projects in Australia. Or recently we had a beautiful polyurea project in the North Coast in Egypt, where you have amazing development projects. Now, the key is to not always start new applications, but also make sure that you scale them up accordingly, right? I think what's next is that we also enable our plant in Egypt to eventually produce or cater to the demand of case customers, and the market itself there, so many industries to supply to that that will give all of these applications another push.
I'd like to finish, Martin, with a couple of quick fire questions, if I may. So I was reading that you take part in ultra marathons. I didn't even know what an ultra marathon was until I Googled it this morning. How on earth do you find the time for that, Martin?
Well, yeah, good question. And I have to admit, but my biggest strength is being efficient with the training, right? The way my mind functions, I just need to register for a crazy race, and then at least I will push myself out a couple of times. But indeed, I'm registered for the Comrades Ultra Marathon in 6 weeks from now, mid of June, in Durban in South Africa, 88 kilometers.
Wow!
Which will be the training run for a 100-mile in Berlin along the Berlin Wall. So that's my plan.
That's amazing.
It's all about thinking big, right?
Well, I mean, after watching the London Marathon at the weekend, I mean, are you going to be wearing the Adidas Adios sneakers that set a new record?
Stephen, the beautiful thing about long races is nobody cares how slow you are, right? Everybody's like, wow, you finished, yay. And if you take an hour longer, nobody
Yeah.
cares.
I remember
Just
doing
don't stop.
I was going to say, I remember doing a run with my wife many years ago when we first got together, and with conditions, I blame the conditions; they were awful, and but we finished after everyone else, and they were putting away the finish line, and please wait, we need to cross the line. But we made it. That was the main thing. Although I feel like I need to go for a run after this podcast now.
Well, Stephen, I was injured for a long period of time. I got so frustrated that I thought, well, listen, I need to start a new hobby. And since I'm afraid of heights, I started skydiving, which
Wow.
which is much faster than ultra running. So that's not the alternative, and it definitely has some more adrenaline to offer.
Wow. Did you get over your fear?
I was starting to get there, and then the airspace got closed. So now it has just reopened. Basically, things are back to normal, and now I have to get where I was
Follow
before.
it through.
Exactly.
So how does Martin keep calm in a crisis? Do you go for a run?
Well, see, in all honesty, the skydiving really helps with that. You know, especially if you're afraid of heights, because you do think about, well, what happens if things go wrong? Well, and for skydiving, the answer is an easy one, right? But once you make peace with that, then nothing else scares you,
Yes.
right? And so basically, in times of crisis, well, first of all, I have an extremely strong team, and this is a wonderful company. But also, I do well under pressure. And if you ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, how bad can it be, right? And so you just give your best and use the opportunities. And sometimes you make mistakes, and often you don't, and then you get the best out of it.
And you mentioned your team there. Is there one word that your team would use to describe you, Martin?
Yeah, I think they would say that I'm driven. If they're mean, they would say I'm too pushy, and I don't listen to them enough.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Martin. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
It was my pleasure, Stephen. Looking forward to the next time.
Thank you. You have been listening to Polycast by UT, helping your business expand in all the right places. Thanks for joining us. See you again soon.